second speaker. We are so grateful to have someone with extensive editorial experiences. We welcome Mr. Ramon Medriano, who is the academic and publication manager of TESOL Asia, who is also chief editor of TESOL International Journal. It is a Scopus Index journal, so it is highly reputable journal, and also the editor of ASEAN EFL Journal. It's also a Scopus Index journal. Mr. Medriano is also a head reviewer of English language education at the LS journals. He's a prolific researcher and visiting professor at Pangasinan State University School of Advanced Studies. Mr. Medriano has been one of our speakers in the first ISLEX conference, and we are so grateful that he is willing to join again in our webinar on the topic of research, writing, and publication. So without further ado, Mr. Medriano, I give the floor to you for your presentation. And if in case in my introduction there's some mistakes, please do kindly to correct it. Thank you very much, Mr. Medriano. The floor is yours.
Yeah, hi everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you, Ibu Linda, for the introduction. That's actually a very good introduction. Thank you very much. So I still remember 2019 when I visited Kupang for a presentation in an international conference as well. And I thank the university, Nusa Chandanya University, for this opportunity again to be able to speak to everyone about researching, writing, and publishing. And thank you very much to Santri Jahimo for the invitation. So everyone, I've been doing editorial work for quite some time. That's more than a decade. And now I took over editorial and review processes in 5 Scopus Index journals. So you know how big the responsibility is, and you know how busy the responsibility provides to editors like me. So this afternoon, I will be presenting my discussion on writing process, and also I'll be presenting publication processes. And maybe I can discuss things about predatory publishing. So now let me share my screen to everyone. Can everybody see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, thank you very much. So this is research publication. This is my name. I was introduced by Ibu Linda earlier. So I'm the academic and publication manager of TESOL Asia, the chief editor of TESOL International Journal, and the head reviewer of the English language education publishing, handling 5 Scopus Index journals. So there are actually reasons why an academic will publish. Some would say, it's not very important. Why do you need to publish? Well, in the Philippines and other parts of Asia, publication is actually a must, because before you can be a professor, an assistant professor, or an associate professor, the committee will actually check on your credibility as an academic. And that credibility is being checked by the number of contributions you had through research. Okay, so let me just give you a rundown of the 5 reasons for academic publication. First one is your contribution to the body of knowledge. So this entails the creation of new ideas for your contribution to the body of knowledge in a specific area or your area of specialization. For example, my area of specialization is development studies and English language teaching. So for me to be able to tell everyone that I am actually very good at my craft in both specialization, development studies, and English language teaching, then I need to add something to the body of knowledge of these 2 specializations. And that means providing or publishing articles that may add to add or contribute to the current body of knowledge in these 2 specific specializations. So with that, the reason your university is asking you, or your university asked you to write a thesis or a dissertation, is for you to be able to contribute something, not just to your university, but who knows, when you have these theses and dissertations published in a reputable journals, then that adds up to the body of knowledge. Then the second reason is your contribution to policy making. I know that before a policy gets approved, maybe in Indonesia or in Philippines and the other parts of the world, before a policy gets approved by people, yes, they actually check on proof or evidences why they are making these policies. In the Philippines, we had our policy before of English only policy, wherein they teach English to even to kindergarten, like 3-year-old to 4-year-old pupils in the pre-elementary level. And now we actually moved into doing the MTB MLE, or the mother tongue based multilingual education, wherein from grades 1 to 3, we teach pupils, or we teach students, their mother tongue or their first language. Because with this policy, it's actually been a research, and policymakers check on research projects of these academics, wherein these academics told everyone that before someone gets to acquire a second language and be proficient in the second language, there is a need for these people, or there is a need for people to be proficient of their first language first, because it is actually something that will help them in translating things when they acquire the second language. And that's the theory of translation and second language acquisition. That's the reason we ended up with the mother tongue based multilingual education in the Philippines. And that's what's happening now in the Philippines. But because of this policy, there are other researchers who actually push forth their research projects saying that mother tongue based education will not help in the acquisition of a second language or a target language. And now the policymakers in the Philippines, like the Congress people or the Congress men or people in the Congress and the Senate, they're actually thinking of abolishing the mother tongue based multilingual education in the Philippines. And this is a bit of a linguistic war in the Philippines because of this policy. Now, the third reason for academic publication is it's actually your recognition of your credibility. So how do they know, or how would everyone know that you are actually a very good academic or clinician in your line of specialization? Not unless you have a proof that you have contributed to that body of knowledge. And that proof is actually a recognition of your credibility. So who's Ramon Medriano Jr.? Who is, I'm so sorry for using the name. So who is Santri Jahimo in the world of English language teaching or English language pedagogy? So who is Santri Jahimo or Ramon Medriano in the area of language research? See? The fourth one is for career advancement. Yes, I have mentioned earlier research projects as proof of the academic's credibility and the academic being able to contribute to the body of knowledge. And with that contribution, you can actually get promoted by being a professor or an associate professor or an assistant professor. And I think that also happens in Indonesia and that happens in the Philippines as well. The fifth one is it boosts self-esteem. Who isn't happy to see their name published in a reputable journal? Like seeing your name with that article and thinking that your article will be read by other researchers in that same area and that your paper will have a possibility to get cited by these people, that actually provides you self-esteem, like that confidence, like, okay, so I'm able to contribute something to our specialization. So other researchers might think of duplicating or replicating my research. See? So that provides self-esteem. So after explaining the 5 reasons for academic publication, now let's move on to the next part. Like, what's in it for you? Okay, so I've already mentioned the 5 reasons why you need to publish your work. But what's in it for like an academician? What's in it for a teacher? What's in it for a student? Yes, so just like what I've mentioned earlier, it's actually a proof of academic excellence, a source of academic pride, financial gain. I know that happens also in Indonesia because you can be given a financial grant by your university or by the government by just doing research projects. And with that, you're not only gaining academic pride, you're not only gaining academic excellence, but you're also gaining financially. Now, a venue for more academic collaborations. Yes, because they say that we don't monopolize knowledge. So my specialization is into pragmatics and rhetorics. And I'm into English language pedagogy at the moment. So I don't think that I am the best person to talk to when it comes to pragmatics, when it comes to rhetorics. There are other people or other researchers who are also really very good at their craft. So with this collaboration or with this publication, you actually get to meet other people or other researchers in the same field. And who knows, you might end up sharing knowledge. And by sharing knowledge, you do academic collaboration. And that will help your community, that will help your university and the university of your collaborator. Now, academic and research credibility, I've already mentioned that and explained. Academic and research impact, I'll explain that later. So what is the impact of your research? We'll have that explained later. Now, I've mentioned earlier that I've already, not that I've gained, but actually I was asked to take over the handling of the 5 Scopus journals, namely the Asian EFL Journal, which is the oldest journal in our publishing house. It was founded 2005, was accepted in Scopus in 2005, and re-accepted in Scopus in 2011. We have the Asian ESP Journal for interdisciplinary studies in English, accepted in Scopus in 2014. The TESOL International Journal, accepted in Scopus in 2018. The TESOL International Journal features papers of English language pedagogy or English language teaching practices. We also have the Journal of English as an International Language, accepted in Scopus in 2018. So this journal is very special because aside from uh, English as its area in Scopus, we were also given sociology and political science as areas of these Journal of English as an International Language. Now we have our baby journal, the Linguistics Journal, was accepted in Scopus in 2018. And now it's gaining impact in the languages and linguistics area. So now looking at these 5 journals, we also need to take into consideration the quartile ranking of journals. There are a lot of Asians and sometimes Europeans asking me and asking the office, what's the Q score of your journal? Q score refers to the quartile ranking of your journal. So how high your journal have reached into the specific areas where it is actually included. For example, Asian EFL journal under the language and linguistics area is quartile 2. Linguistics journal under languages and linguistics is also quartile 2, like Asian EFL journal. But we are really very happy when we found out that 3 of our journals are now in quartile 1, meaning 3 of our journals are actually in the first 30% tier of the language and linguistics area in Scopus. So we have the TESOL International Journal with 0.43 0.43 citation index. Journal of English as an International Language with 0.47 citation index, and Asian ESP Journal with 0.32 citation index, all quartile 1. So what's the meaning when the quartile score gets higher? When the quartile score gets higher, readership gets higher even. So the higher the quartile score of the journal to where your paper will be published, then the better the readership score, meaning the higher the journal's ranking is, the more readers of the journals are. So if you want to get noticed in languages and linguistics, or if you want to get noticed in your area of specialization, for example, in languages and linguistics, you can, I'm not saying that you need to, but you can opt to publish in high quartile ranking journals like our journals. Now, the next presentation is, of course, one might ask me, like, Ramon, what's actually the biggest hiccup that you've experienced when you were not yet an editor? Of course, I got also rejected. Papers also got rejected in journals where I submitted them. Yes, and rejection is actually normal. We get rejected in life, we get rejected in love, and in academic publishing, we get to have this rejection as well. But don't worry, rejection is part of life. Rejection is part of academic development. It doesn't mean that when your paper gets rejected, it's actually kaput or zero. It doesn't add up to the knowledge. Maybe it is rejected or it got rejected because of some journal rules that you were not able to follow. So I have here some of the rules that we follow in our journal production. So you need to check that you are actually submitting a paper within the journal scope, because some people, they send papers that are not languages, that are not linguistic papers, that doesn't refer to second language acquisition, that doesn't refer to second language teaching or second language pedagogy. So we reject those papers because in the first place, why are you submitting, for example, an economics paper in a linguistics journal? um, that is not logical, right? So you have to check your paper, you have to check the focus of your paper. If it's within the journal scope, then if it's within the journal scope, you go ahead, submit it. Then the second reason for paper rejection is overgeneralization of findings from a small case. This happens when you have a case study, or some they actually say that it is an empirical study, but they can only present a small case or a small um, respondent or research participant. With that, you cannot say, or you cannot overgeneralize that it represents the entirety of, for example, I got like 12 students from the Philippines as my research participants. And then when I get to publish my paper, I don't need to provide a generalization that these 12 students actually comprises or actually represents the entirety of the students in the Philippines. No, it's just a portion of like the student population in the Philippines. So maybe it just provides, or the research only provides like 10% view of an entire 360-degree view. See? Now, the third one is outdated literature index. In my university, we tell students that they cannot cite researches or research projects 10 years older. So it should be recent researches. Like, Ramon, what if we have like an old research that we want to cite? Well, if you want to cite that old research, it must be from someone who is already a reputable academic in this field of study. And if you want, you can also cite the paper or the researcher who cited this researcher. For example, 1985 Krashen, as cited by Jahimo 2019. So the 1985 actually is good and it's acceptable in the journal because you are citing the work, the current work that cited an older work. So you can cite Jahimo as Jahimo cited an older work, like 1985. Now, lack of methodological knowledge. Methodology is really a sensitive matter to discuss when it comes to publishing, because some they provide like methodology or methods that cannot actually answer the research questions, or maybe the method is too weak that it won't be able to provide an empirical data or an empirical empirical data out of the questions presented in the research. So you have to check with experts. You have to check with your thesis advisor or dissertation advisor if the method you use is actually correct or not. Key findings not linked to literature. Yes, some researchers, they forget to link findings to their review of literature, because things that you put in review of literature or literature review should also be addressed in findings and results of your study. Now, the other reason is it adds nothing to new knowledge. For example, like in one of the questions earlier, like how do you actually motivate students to not keep on replicating a study by just changing the locale or the number of respondents? See, so if you keep on doing the same research project and just changing the locale and the number of students involved in the research, it adds nothing new to the knowledge. Not unless you add another methodology, or maybe you add another concept or process in data gathering, or maybe in the process of data analysis. Then that adds to new knowledge. Now, the last reason for paper rejection, I've rejected a lot of papers because of this reason, and that's plagiarism. Plagiarism is actually using something that isn't yours, especially when you're telling everyone that it's yours, but it's actually not yours. Yes. When you find yourself working, like copying something original from another researcher and taking it as yours, that's actually plagiarism. That's academic theft. So I also saw like one question earlier, like how can we actually do paraphrasing? Like paraphrase it in the way that the meaning is actually the same, but words are not. Paraphrase it in the way that you are not only changing some words in their synonyms, but also changing the structure as well. Okay. Now, plagiarism. If 67% is copied and 33% is original, do we accept or reject? We reject, of course, because we need to have a paper that's actually, we say 95% original and 5%, when you say not original, they're actually quotations from other researchers. At least they're properly cited. Just like this research work. This research work was actually submitted to us, and it was found that this research has already been published in another journal by the same author. Yeah. So what happened is that it was actually a self citation plagiarism or self plagiarism. He plagiarized himself by not telling us that what he submitted is actually a portion of what has already been published in another journal. It's the same thing. Even if it's yours, it's still theft. You are submitting something that has already been published and you want that published again. So better tell the journal that this article is actually a portion of what has already been published. At least with that, I understand that this may be like a salami slice of a bigger research project. Now, the gap. Okay. So we were talking about gaps earlier. Dr. Neil Rupidara talked about gaps. Yes, gap is actually something that will provide you questions that you need to answer. Before you research into something, check if there's a gap or check if like previous authors or previous researchers were not able to do something. And if they were not able to do that something, then that can be a something that you can push forth as a research project. So I also was able to check a question. Do all research projects have gaps in them? Yes. Because if you don't have a gap in a research work, then that is actually a novel research. It's a new one. And that only happens if you've been in the business or you've been in this career or you've been in this field for quite some time. Yes. Because if there's no gap, then you will build theory. If you want to build the theory, you should be or you could have been working on your field of specialization for more than 10 years because it's impossible to build a theory if you say that your career or your experience teaching English is only 2 years. I'm not saying that when you've been teaching for 2 years, you're not good. I'm saying that it's really difficult to push forth a new theory if you have not experienced the entirety of the field, like English language teaching. English language teaching is a broad area. Okay. Now, the purpose of literature review is, okay, someone also asked this earlier. The purpose of literature review are the following. It develops researchers' understanding of the research project. It demonstrates the researcher's knowledge of the research field. That's actually claiming centrality of the research, of the research work. As according to Dr. Neil earlier, according to Swales and Feek, yeah, in the CARS model of building your literature review. Now, to develop the understanding of the readers related to the given topic. See? So the purpose of literature review is to develop the researcher's understanding of the concepts of the research project and to demonstrate knowledge of the research field that the researcher would want to push forth. And then the third one is to develop understanding of the readers related to the given topic. So it helps in developing background of the research because not all readers know about your research and the background of your research. Maybe they were not able to read what you've read or the like previous researchers' research. Maybe you've read that and they were not able to read it. Readers' knowledge is updated related to the field. Yes, that's the reason researchers or other researchers read other researchers' research project for them to gain an updated knowledge of that same field. And then readers' understanding improves after reading the literature review. Yes. And actually, when you write your literature review, write is as best as you can. Because sometimes research collaborations and citations actually happen when they see that your literature review is really very good. Now, research is spending 6 hours reading 35 papers. Actually, it's not just 6 hours. I'm doing my, okay, this is to motivate everyone listening to me now. I'm doing my dissertation now. I'm taking my second PhD. I got my first PhD in development studies, major in languages. And I think that's not enough. As an academic, I think it's not enough for me to just get one PhD, that's development studies. I want more. So I studied again. I took my PhD in language teaching, English. And now I'm on my last phase of my dissertation. Next month, I'll be presenting my dissertation and I'll be having my Viva Voce in school. So please pray for me. And I hope that I'll pass the Viva Voce so I can be a double PhD holder. So research is not just spending 6 hours. I spent like more than 6 hours. I spent months in reading not just 35 papers. I think I've already read like 62 papers. And the problem is, out of the 62 papers, you can write one sentence containing two references. See? Because it's not just that you need to focus on one reference. No. Because that's too selfish. It doesn't mean that you see that this research project from other author or from other researcher is really very good. It doesn't mean that that's actually the best. Yes, Dr. Neil earlier mentioned that in Indonesia, there are some universities who got like little access to journals, to articles, but actually there are open publication or open articles or open journals, open access journals, OAJ, open access journals that you can browse on, and you might be able to see some research projects that you may want to replicate, or maybe their research project may give you motivation to do another research project, or maybe a parallel study of the research project. So research is not spending 6 hours. Research is spending more hours reading more papers so you can write one sentence containing two references. And I tell you, while doing research, I'm not sure if it's also good to have a love life, because when you spend more hours reading, you actually spend less socially. I know. Okay. So there are actually considerations in writing your research. So I got here five considerations in writing your research: novelty, impact, motivation, expert assistance, and the fifth one is, can it be replicated? So let's have the first one, novelty. The novelty of research refers to one or more elements that are new in research, including new methodology, new observation which leads to a new knowledge discovery. A novelty might contribute to scientific progress, as stated by the philosopher Imre Lakatos, that good research programs are progressive. That's right. Research programs, projects should be progressive. Yes. But some universities and some research advisors, I'm so sorry, I don't want to demean research advisors, but other research advisors, they're too selfish, because what they want to do is that they want their research projects to be cited by the research advisees. So when they advise their advisees, like, can you do something that is connected to my research? So when you publish it, you get to cite me. That's actually selfish. So as a research advisor myself, what I tell my students, or what I do is, I ask my students, okay, come here, listen to me. Please research on something that's near your heart. Something that you can actually be proud of, something that you can work on. Because as a research advisor, the reason there is the word advice there is for me to advise you, not for me to control you. Because if I will control the student, I might be giving the student something that the student cannot do. And that's bad, because I might end up doing it for the student. And it's not the student's research, it is my research. And that's bad. It also happens in the Philippines. That's the reason we've been like promoting like a free flow of communication between advisors and students, that students need to have that freedom to choose their topic, not their professors asking them like, these are the topics that you can choose from. Where's the freedom, right? Maybe the topics presented are not the things that I wanted to study. Maybe the presented studies are really very difficult to study. See, I'm not sure if this also happens in Indonesia, but I also want to suggest that if you want research projects from your students that are really well written, then tell them to write something that's actually in line to their specialization and something that they want to study about. Now, regarding novelty, there are actually reasons on how your research project can be novel. Like in my case, I am into pragmatics and rhetoric study. So I've been checking on papers on pragmatics only. I'm reading papers on rhetorics only. So what I did when I had my development studies PhD, I actually pushed for a combination of these pragmatic analysis and rhetorics analysis in analyzing the speech of the president of the Philippines, because the current president of the Philippines, when he speaks, he actually speaks with power, and he sometimes uses bad words or I forget bad words or curse words. And I'm not sure if these bad words or curse words or inclitics, not inclitics, bad words or these curse words actually have impact to Filipinos. So what I did, I actually checked on the pragmatics and the rhetorics of the president's speech, and it was found out that Actually, he uses curse words or bad words for him to look as a credible president of the Philippines. But he doesn't mean the bad side of the bad or curse words he uses. So that's something that I found out when I did my study. And this concept is actually mine. And it has um, IP or intellectual property certificate from the intellectual property office in the Philippines. The reason I can put here Medriano 2019 because it's mine. And now I'm doing my research in an assessment model of blended learning in the Philippines. And I have here an incomplete concept that I'm using in my study. So please do not take a photo because this is mine. So you have here Medriano 2021 because this is what I'll be presenting next month in my dissertation Viva Voce. So I proposed a holistic assessment model for the blended learning program because now that we are stricken by pandemic, we are still in this stage wherein we blend modality, the online or the synchronous and the asynchronous modality, or the online and the offline modality. But we don't have yet in the Philippines an assessment model in assessing students having this online and offline learning and teaching process. So this is what I'll be presenting to the panel members of my dissertation Viva Voce and to my advisor as well. It's novel because this is mine. I've created this one and it underwent validation by 5 local experts and 6 international experts in the field of language, English language teaching or English language pedagogy. See? So when you ask me what is my contribution to the body of knowledge, I've already contributed one in the study of pragmatics and rhetorics analysis. And I'll be submitting again a new concept in analyzing assessment in blended learning this 2021. Yes. Now, when we talk about impact, so what's the impact of your study or research? Impact is actually connected to um, can your study be done by other researchers in the same field in other countries? Can it be replicated? How can it be replicated? Is your study something that is very important that other researchers would want to do it in their country as well? Well, impact can be measured when you check Scopus because these papers are Scopus index papers. You check that the first article, Integrating Business English Communication in the Contextualized Teaching of an ESL Graduate Course, it got 20 citations in Scopus, 20 citations from different parts of the world. And then the second article, Cognition Toward the Mother Tongue, Attitude Toward English, Chavacano, and Filipino, a structural equation modeling approach with bootstrap analysis. This is actually a combination of statistics, mathematics, and English in one language research project because we made use of bootstrap analysis, structural equation modeling. It got 15 citations already. But just yesterday, my friend told me, like Go Silk told me that he already received like 20 plus emails from different parts of the world asking if they can replicate the study. And I said, that's very good. And then the third one is the dominance construction in monologic political discourse based on selected public speeches of the President of the Philippines, wherein it got 18 citations, also from different parts of the world. Now I got an email last month asking if they can do this in a specific country in Europe. And I said yes, and I'm willing to share the tools I've used in this study. Actually, it's not just collaboration that you can get out of the impact of your study, but actually academic friends as well. Another thing about impact is in the Philippines, impact is also measured by who are now using the output of your research project. Because some research projects, you have an output. And are these outputs being used by the community? If it's being used by the community, then there's actually an impact. If it's not being used by the community, then there's a question over why. Why the output or the outcome of the research is not being used by the community or a university or a school. Why is your research not gaining citation? Is there a problem with the impact? Maybe you've researched on like a topic that is really difficult to do a parallel study or to replicate, because it is only advisable to do that research in that specific country. Sometimes research that are local research projects, they're really difficult to be replicated because of their locale and the type of methodology involved in the study. Now, we also have motivation. So what is my motivation in doing research? It's not just prestige, it's not just money, but being able to help other researchers do their thing or do their research project by providing them an area, not just providing them an area, but providing them like theories, literature review that they can read over and over. That is actually a motivation for me. It's not just money, it's not just prestige, but being able to help other researchers gain that prestige and gain academic excellence. That's actually a motivation. So I think before you write something, you better ask yourself, what will be your motivation in writing this? Please do not tell me that your motivation is because this research project is a requirement in school. That's not a motivation. That's actually pressure. Motivation is something coming from your heart, not just coming from here. Okay. Because when you are well motivated in doing a research project, you can actually write better, think better, speak better, and you can actually defend it better. Now, expert assistance. This is also crucial in thesis writing, dissertation writing, and research writing. Just like what I've mentioned earlier about thesis advisors and students. When students get to choose their topic, students also need to have that freedom to choose their advisor. The advisor should be someone whose specialization is the student's topic. I was asked yesterday if I can be an advisor, a thesis advisor, and the student's thesis is all about curriculum assessment. I said no because I'm not into curriculum assessment. I don't do curriculum assessment, curriculum development. Yes, so I said no, and the student said, "Oh, why?" Because it's not my specialization. I cannot help you. I won't be able to advise you best. So it's better if you find someone who is into curriculum development, curriculum planning, because maybe he or she can advise you better. What if you got no professors in that same field? You can actually check on articles in journals wherein you can find that that article is really relevant to your research project. And most likely, the email address of the researcher is actually posted there. So you might as well have that bravery to send an email to that researcher asking for assistance, or maybe if the researcher can provide you some details of his or her research project, because that might be of help to you. Then the last one, can it be replicated? This is something that you need to think about. When you do a research and you want to improve on your impact, the research should be something that can be replicated. Okay. And I think have done my part in speaking, and I apologize if I spoke too fast. Thank you very much. And I'm now seeing a lot of questions, and I am tasked to answer them. Thank you very much. I think that's the last part of my discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Medriano, for your presentation. It seems that you have answered some questions that previously was asked to Mr. Neil Pidara, so we thank you also for that.
Not a
The
problem.
further questions will be led by my fellow member of the committee, Ms. Carlin. Carlin, please.
Thank you, Ibu Linda, for giving me a chance to take this Q&A session. And quick introduction, my name is Johanna Sangaji, and I will lead this Q&A session. And the first question is from Piela Jahimo. People say it's difficult to have a writing published in Scopus indexed journals. How hard is it?
How hard is it?
Yes.
Actually, the answer is you get to be rejected 10 times. Not just 10 times, but I got rejected like a couple of times, not just 10 times. Because when you are a budding researcher, your writing style may be something that's not acceptable in that Scopus Index journal. So I might as well suggest that if you want your studies to be published, or studies or research projects to be published in Scopus Index journals, better write in a non-Scopus Index journal first. Because when it gets accepted in a non-Scopus Index journal, then that's the time you get that momentum of, okay, so it gets accepted. Thank you very much. So at least with your acceptance in the non-Scopus Index journal, you get to see the difference when you get accepted in a non-Scopus Index journal versus when you get rejected in a Scopus Index journal, because you get to see the difference of the writing style, uh, the voice, the use of the use of the use of how do you call that? The use of pictures, the use of numbers in that journal is very different. So start publishing in a non-Scopus Index journal first. At least it will provide you momentum. It will provide you an experience before looking at having your papers published in a Scopus Index journal, because it's really difficult. Johanna?
Okay, thank you for the answer. And the next question is from Ragil Afriansa. What if our research is totally new and we can't find any related literatures? How should we write literature review, sir?
Okay, there's actually what we call literature review, uh, review of related literature and review of related studies. So if you cannot find related literature, you might be able to find related studies. Mhm. But if it's totally new, like really totally new, what I can suggest is to find someone who's already in this research world, or into um, who's into this specialization for some time. Ask him or her to share ideas, because ideas from someone who's been doing this for some time actually provides a review of what you want to do in your study. Yeah, totally new. Okay. What is totally new in the English language pedagogy? Agile, I think when you have a totally new research, send it to me so I can check. I might be able to provide you literature. Okay,
Wow.
Joanna?
Okay, thank you. And this is the last question from Maria Grace. What's your strategy to keep the consistency of topic when you read the references?
What's your strategy to keep the consistency of topic when you read the references? You mean when I read the references where I'm getting the literature? So what's your strategy to keep the consistency of the topic? Okay, when you read others' work, just read. Do not adopt their style of writing because your style of writing is different. Yeah, I've been in the writing world for like 20 years. I've been an editor for more than 10 years. So when I get to see a writing style, it gets connected to someone who actually did it. So when I get to see another paper in the same writing style, I know who actually wrote it. So consistency is not just the consistency of the topic, but the consistency of your writing style. Consistency of the topic actually goes back to your literature or literature review actually is connected to your research questions. So when you see that your literature review is not good or is not consistent, go back to your research questions because your research questions will provide you like a better view of what needs to be done on your literature review, like the consistency of topic. Always go back to your introduction maybe or to your research questions or the RQs. Mhm.
Okay, sir. And this will be the last question for Norani Subandi. How strategy to have a novelty research?
Okay, so what is the strategy to have a novel research or novelty in research? The strategy, Norani, is for you to and read literatures. And when you read literatures, just jot down or write the gap that you were able to find in these researches. Most likely, the gap is actually presented in the scope and the limitation of the study. There's actually one part of the study where it provides you the delimitation, something that the researcher was not able to do in that research. And when you see that delimitation, that is actually something that you can do in your research to have that novelty. Or maybe you have something new in mind. For example, um, semantics study. Semantics has already been studied for some time. Yes. So I think better if you combine semantics with another study. For example, pragma-semantics or semantics and linguistic landscape. For novelty, you can actually combine theories together to actually have a new theory, like linguistic landscape and pragmatics, linguistic landscape and rhetorics, linguistic landscape and ethno-linguistics together, or linguistic landscape and social linguistics, or cultural linguistics and linguistic landscape.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Medriano, for
Not a
such
problem. Thank you
amazing
very much. I
answer.
hope that I answered the questions.
Okay, thank you, sir. This is the end of this session, and I will give it back to Ibu Linda as the moderator to lead us in the next session. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.